While Hawkins emphasized areas where SHEDEUR Sanders needs to grow, the host of the take, especially on the quarterback's pocket presence. When Hawkins pointed to Sanders' tendency to retreat under pressure, the host challenged a narrative, suggesting it's a symptom of Colorado's broken offensive line, not a sign of weakness. According to him, Sanders' resilience remains intact, and his pocket retreat is more about survival than panic. It's a counterpoint that reframes Sanders' playstyle not as a liability, but as a response to constant protection breakdowns. This disagreement adds depth to the conversation, raising questions about how much of a quarterback's flaws are personal versus systemic. It also shifts part of the developmental burden onto the Browns' infrastructure. Can they give Sanders the tools, protection, and scheme to bring out his strengths rather than magnify his...
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Andrew Hawkins just lit the match on football Twitter. The former Browns wide receiver went all in on SHEDEUR Sanders in a recent interview, making it crystal clear who he thinks should be Cleveland's next franchise quarterback. The optimism wasn't subtle, Hawkins said, on record, that SHEDEUR has everything you want in a future leader for an NFL team. Confidence, toughness, competitive fire. It was a glowing endorsement with the kind of certainty that makes headlines. But he didn't stop at hype. Hawkins broke down the traits that, in his eyes, separate Sanders from the rest of the upcoming quarterback class. What really stood out? His risk-taking. Not recklessness, but a controlled aggression. The kind of mentality that steps up when everything's collapsing and still delivers a clutch throw. Hawkins painted SHEDEUR as a competitor who thrives under pressure. A gamer. The kind of guy you want under center in January. Hawkins wasn't just reacting off vibes. He was speaking to what he called the intangible stuff. Mental toughness. The ability to bounce back. And yeah, he acknowledged the messy parts of SHEDEUR's game. He didn't sugarcoat the development still needed. Decision-making, consistency, knowing when to let a play die instead of forcing it. Those were all on the list. But Hawkins' bigger point was that those things can be coached. You can't coach guts. You can't coach the instinct to take control of a game when it's on the line. That's where SHEDEUR shines the brightest, Hawkins argued. He's fearless. Whether it's taking a hit or launching a risky deep ball when the safe option's a check down, SHEDEUR doesn't flinch. Hawkins made it clear. In a league where pressure breaks quarterbacks every Sunday, SHEDEUR's resistance to folding is a massive plus. The comments drew immediate reaction, some in agreement, others raising eyebrows. Hawkins may have laid out a strong case for SHEDEUR's intangibles, but his critiques also opened the door for a more complicated conversation. He mentioned operational flaws, situational awareness, the occasional late throw, and the tendency to extend plays a beat too long. Still, those criticisms didn't take away from the overall tone of belief. Hawkins repeatedly emphasized that SHEDEUR's ceiling is high, especially if he's given the right support system. Training, structure, a solid coaching environment. Those are the variables Hawkins says could unlock SHEDEUR. In the days after Hawkins' comments went viral, the discussion started shifting. It wasn't just about SHEDEUR anymore. It was about how ready any college QB really is for the NFL grind. SHEDEUR's name just happened to be the flashpoint. Analysts started dissecting film, fans pulled out stats, and suddenly everyone had a take on whether Hawkins was being prophetic or overly generous. The debate boiled down to a central question. Was SHEDEUR's toughness a mask for mechanical issues? Or was his sometimes chaotic play style the result of everything breaking down around him? Because let's be honest, Colorado's offensive line wasn't exactly giving him clean pockets to work with. And that's where the real split started. Hawkins implied SHEDEUR could thrive in Cleveland, but some weren't buying it. The counterargument came fast, mainly that SHEDEUR's retreating habits in the pocket weren't a flaw in mindset, but a product of circumstance. The host of the discussion took that line of thought further, flat out disagreeing with Hawkins. Retreating in the pocket, he argued, was survival, not fear, not panic. When you're under pressure 2 seconds after the snap, of course you backpedal. Of course you try to extend the play. The host defended SHEDEUR's pocket movement as instinctive and necessary, not immature or unrefined. That disagreement reframed the whole discussion. It wasn't just about how good SHEDEUR is, it was about what we expect from quarterbacks in broken systems. It highlighted a deeper tension. Are we holding players accountable for their traits or punishing them for the failures of their team? In SHEDEUR's case, the host insisted that resilience isn't about always standing tall. It's about finding ways to keep the play alive when the pocket collapses. Sanders, he argued, doesn't play scared. He plays to survive. And sometimes, that survival is the most aggressive move you can make. As talk circled back to the Browns, the stakes became more obvious. This isn't just a theoretical conversation. Cleveland needs a long-term answer at quarterback. That reality puts pressure on every scouting decision, which is why Hawkins' comments hit so hard. He wasn't just saying SHEDEUR was talented. He was saying SHEDEUR had the tools to lead a franchise, to weather chaos, to be the guy who thrives in messes other quarterbacks can't handle. The Browns haven't had many of those guys. And even the ones who showed flashes. Well, consistency was always the killer. Hawkins clearly thinks SHEDEUR could break that cycle, but only if he's put in the right position to grow. It's not just about the skill set. It's about the mindset. Hawkins kept returning to SHEDEUR's fire, how he doesn't back down when the lights are the brightest. He referenced multiple games where SHEDEUR delivered in crunch time, even when the scoreboard didn't favor him. That's what separates potential stars from career backups. The unteachable stuff. And when you think about the AFC North, brutal defenses, freezing temps, hostile crowds, it's not just arm strength that matters. It's grit. Hawkins sees that in SHEDEUR. That's why he pushed so hard for Cleveland to consider him seriously. He thinks the guy can handle the heat. Meanwhile, the reaction online was a mixed bag. Some fans echoed Hawkins' enthusiasm, calling SHEDEUR a culture changer. Others weren't so convinced, pointing to his inconsistencies and lack of NFL-level polish. But what stuck was the fact that both sides agreed on one thing. SHEDEUR isn't afraid of the moment. And that's rare. If you talk to coaches, they'll tell you, pressure is the great equalizer. Plenty of players dominate in practice or rack up college numbers. But get them into a 2-minute drill in the fourth quarter, and the wiring starts to short-circuit. Hawkins made it clear. SHEDEUR's wiring is different. That's why he's willing to bet big on him. Ultimately, the discussion underscored what makes draft seasons so chaotic. Projection is an imperfect science. Hawkins' belief in SHEDEUR isn't just about what he's done. It's about what he could do, if given the time and tools. And maybe that's what frustrated some listeners. Because betting on potential is risky, especially in Cleveland. But Hawkins never backed down. His stance was clear. SHEDEUR Sanders has the mindset, the grit, and the raw ability to be great. Not just good, great. And in a league where that kind of belief is rare, that kind of backing says a lot. If you've been following this debate, drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you buy into the Hawkins hype? Or are you still waiting to be convinced? Either way, make sure you like the video, share it with someone who loves a good QB debate, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. In SHEDEUR's own interviews, he's always walked the line between self-assurance and proving mode. He knows what people say. He hears the criticism, the doubt, the analysis that tries to box him in. And yet, he never really sounds shaken by it. That's something even his skeptics admit. He talks like someone who already knows where he's going. That unshakable confidence, for some, is arrogance. For others, it's exactly what you want in a leader. When asked about pressure, he doesn't dodge. He embraces it. He talks about expectation like it's part of the job, not a burden. And when you're hearing that from a guy who's had cameras on him since high school, who's carried his last name into every locker room, there's weight behind it. Hawkins didn't invent that narrative. He just amplified it. Now, let's not pretend Cleveland is an easy landing spot. The Browns' quarterback carousel is practically an NFL meme at this point. No position has seen more turnover, more disappointment, more false hope. So when Andrew Hawkins says this is the guy who could end all of that, people are going to raise eyebrows. Because they've heard it before. And yet, there's something different here. It's not just about physical tools. Hawkins isn't hyping a cannon arm or freak athleticism. He's talking about how SHEDEUR handles failure. That's what caught everyone's attention. Because in Cleveland, failure is part of the ecosystem. You can't just ride the highs. You have to survive the lows. And Hawkins is saying SHEDEUR's already built for that. When SHEDEUR speaks about development, it's all work-focused. He talks about film. He talks about reads. He talks about learning. It doesn't sound like someone waiting for stardom to happen. It sounds like someone grinding toward it. That kind of mindset matters in a city like Cleveland, where every first down feels like a mini redemption arc and every QB has to earn the crowd's respect one play at a time. The way Hawkins tells it, SHEDEUR has already put himself through fire, playing behind a weak line, carrying a roster, taking blame after every loss. That's NFL training camp disguised as a college season. He's already been tested. Now it's about refinement. There's also a media angle to this story. When SHEDEUR's at the podium, he doesn't try to win the room. He owns it. He's not overly rehearsed, but he's measured. It's a balancing act that rookie quarterbacks usually fumble. Hawkins noticed that too. He referenced SHEDEUR's media presence as part of what makes him NFL ready, not just for the field, but for everything that comes with the job. It matters. In a league where every soundbite becomes a headline, having a quarterback who knows how to control the message is a huge asset. Cleveland knows that all too well. A poised voice after a loss can calm a storm. Hawkins says SHEDEUR brings that. Not fake humility, but calm clarity. And that's a big deal. What's wild is that Hawkins didn't drop his opinion in some throwaway moment. He chose to go deep on this. He talked about leadership, not just highlights. About how quarterbacks shape culture. He even called SHEDEUR someone who raises the standard of those around him. That's not casual praise. That's a locker room endorsement. And let's not forget, Hawkins was in that Browns locker room. He knows what dysfunction looks like. He knows what fake leadership sounds like. So when he says SHEDEUR feels like the real thing, it carries more weight than just another analyst breaking down a stat sheet. In response to all the noise, SHEDEUR hasn't changed course. He keeps focusing on getting better. More reps, better decision-making. He's already acknowledged the flaws, holding the ball too long, trying to make a hero play when a short gain would have been smarter. That self-awareness isn't common, especially not for quarterbacks who've been hyped since they were teenagers. It's not just about accepting criticism. It's how he responds to it. There's no prove them wrong energy in his interviews. It's more about prove myself right. That's a key difference. It shows a level of maturity that Hawkins clearly. When the host pushed back against Hawkins, saying SHEDEUR's pocket movement might be a red flag, the argument boiled down to context. And context is everything. Because when you're dodging rushers immediately off the snap, your mechanics will get messy. The host pointed that out, not to excuse SHEDEUR, but to explain the why. Hawkins agreed to a point. He said the next step in SHEDEUR's development is learning when not to fight the chaos, when to live another down. That's the operational discipline SHEDEUR still needs to master. But the fire? The fight? That's non-negotiable. And it's what Hawkins refuses to downplay. The Browns' front office is watching all of this, even if they're not saying it publicly. Every quarterback conversation matters when your starter isn't locked in long-term. That's what gives Hawkins' comments added weight. He's not just talking to fans. He knows decision-makers might be listening too. He's positioning SHEDEUR not just as a great player, but as a cultural fit. Cleveland doesn't need a savior. It needs a grinder. A guy who'll show up Monday after a loss and outwork everyone. Someone who doesn't flinch when the media heat turns up. Someone who can evolve through failure. That's the pitch. SHEDEUR's recent press moments have reinforced that vision. He's been asked directly about NFL expectations, and he always brings it back to the work. The film room. The process. That's not lip service. It's echoing what coaches want to hear. He doesn't talk about being the best. He talks about being better. And when it comes to Cleveland, that's the only promise that matters. This is a city that's allergic to hype. What fans want is growth, progress, effort that translates. Hawkins knows that. And he's saying SHEDEUR embodies it. As more people join the debate, Hawkins hasn't softened his stance. If anything, he's doubled down. In follow-up clips, he's reiterated that SHEDEUR's leadership is what sets him apart. Not just in interviews, not just on game day, but in how he carries himself daily. Hawkins keeps coming back to one theme: maturity. He's not saying SHEDEUR is perfect. He's saying SHEDEUR knows he isn't. That humility, combined with fire, is what makes him different. And maybe that's why the conversation has lasted this long. Because it's not just about a kid with talent. It's about a young quarterback who already talks like a pro, fails like a pro, and thinks like a pro. Whether or not the Browns make a move is still up in the air. But one thing's clear: Andrew Hawkins didn't just start a debate. He might have just sparked a movement. Sanders' interview. The more SHEDEUR talks about his path, the more it becomes obvious that he's not trying to be a short-term sensation. He's looking at the long haul. In interviews, he doesn't hype up his stats or dwell on past performances. He talks about accountability, structure, and absorbing every lesson possible. That's rare, especially for someone already in the spotlight before even stepping into the league. When asked about the NFL transition, he doesn't gloss over the difficulties. He talks about learning how to process information faster, adjusting to speed, breaking down coverages, and reading blitzes more efficiently. It's not glamorous, but it's the grind. And the fact that he's leaning into it instead of running from it, that's why people like Hawkins are going all in on him. At pressers, you can see it too. He answers questions with detail, not deflection. And he's not afraid to own his mistakes. After losses, he doesn't throw teammates under the bus. He doesn't play the blame game. He talks about execution, preparation, and what he could have done differently. That level of self-awareness is what Hawkins pointed to over and over again. He said SHEDEUR already handles media pressure like someone who's been in the league for 5 years. He's not rattled, not performative, just steady. That matters when you're heading to a franchise that's lived in chaos. Let's be real. The Browns aren't known for quarterback stability. Every new pick or signing has come with hope, then disappointment. That's why the conversation around SHEDEUR hits differently. It's not about flash, it's about fit. And Hawkins thinks the match is too good to ignore. A quarterback who doesn't fold under pressure, who thrives on film study, and who's been molded by adversity. That's not a gamble. That's a plan. And in Cleveland, a plan with a mentally tough quarterback is a luxury they've rarely had. Hawkins took it further in follow-up interviews. He said SHEDEUR reminds him of quarterbacks who walk into the room and own it. Guys who instantly elevate the building, not just the locker room, but the entire operation. That's not an exaggeration. He meant it literally. He talked about how the best quarterbacks demand more out of themselves, their teammates, their coaches. And the ones who last, they start that process from day one. According to Hawkins, SHEDEUR already thinks that way, already acts that way. He's not just another arm, he's a presence. When SHEDEUR's asked about what motivates him, it's always internal. It's about proving to himself that he can reach his full potential. Not chasing doubters. Not trying to silence critics. Just sharpening his tools every week. That's the mindset that keeps coming up in these evaluations. Hawkins said it directly. SHEDEUR is driven by growth, not glory. That's the kind of quarterback you can build around. Not a highlight chaser. A worker. A builder. And in Cleveland, that could be a cultural shift the franchise desperately needs. There's another layer here: Cleveland's offensive structure. It hasn't exactly been quarterback-friendly. If the Browns want a young player to succeed, they'll need to put the right development team around him. Hawkins made that point loud and clear. It's not enough to just draft SHEDEUR. You have to build for him. That means protection. That means a playbook that matches his strengths. That means a coaching staff that sees the long-term arc, not just the rookie year bumps. Hawkins believes that if the Browns are serious about quarterback stability, SHEDEUR's the guy, but only if they commit to him properly. Every time SHEDEUR is asked about his future, he comes back to preparation. He's not throwing out wild predictions or trying to sell himself to scouts. He talks about tape, about growth areas, about wanting to compete at the highest level without skipping any steps. There's something refreshingly unflashy about it. And that's what continues to fuel the conversation. He doesn't act like he's already arrived. He acts like he knows exactly how far he still has to go, and he's good with that. In his most recent comments, Hawkins even admitted that SHEDEUR might not be perfect out the gate. He said flat out that there would be growing pains. But the difference in his eyes is how SHEDEUR responds to those moments. Not with excuses, not with panic, but with adjustment. That ability to evolve in real time is what Hawkins sees as SHEDEUR's biggest strength. He doesn't double down on mistakes, he learns from them. And that's exactly what separates good quarterbacks from great ones once they hit the pro level. Another thing that's clear, SHEDEUR knows who he is. He's not trying to imitate anyone else's style. He's building his own. His poise isn't borrowed, and his competitive edge isn't for show. It's been sharpened by years of scrutiny, expectations, and playing with a target on his back. That kind of pressure ages most college quarterbacks. It either burns them out or turns them into brands instead of players. But with SHEDEUR, it's done the opposite. It's made him more focused, more intentional. That's the version Hawkins believes can win in Cleveland. And now the pressure turns to the Browns' front office. Because this isn't just a draft question, it's a direction question. Do you go all in on a quarterback who might take a year to refine but has the traits that can reshape a franchise? Or do you chase a quick fix, knowing how many times that's already failed? Hawkins is betting on the long game. He's saying loud and clear that SHEDEUR has what it takes to become not just a starter, but a pillar. And honestly, after years of instability, Cleveland might finally be ready to hear that. So what do you think? Does SHEDEUR have what it takes to lead the Browns into the next era? Is Andrew Hawkins onto something? Or is the hype just a little too soon? Drop your thoughts below. Give this video a thumbs up if you're ready for a real quarterback conversation. And don't forget to hit subscribe. We're not done with this story.